Welcome to the Fund Your Retirement podcast, the show designed to inspire and educate you about funding your retirement. We'll be sharing the best strategies, skills, tips, and resources to grow your wealth. Our host, Lee Cleesby, will introduce you to highly successful investors, traders, entrepreneurs, and experts who are passionate about sharing financial intelligence and solutions for your income and capital growth.
Hello and welcome back to the Fund Your Retirement podcast. We have a special guest today, Laurence Kotlikoff, who is the Professor of Economics at Boston University. Professor Kotlikoff has written 19 books and hundreds of professional articles and op-eds in the Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, Forbes, and Yahoo Finance. He's a New York Times best-selling author and a frequent television guest and radio presenter. In 2014, The Economist named him one of the world's 25 most influential economists. Professor Kotlikoff is here to talk about economics, personal finance, retirement strategy, and his new book, Money Magic, out in January. Hello, Laurence. Thank you for joining us.
Great to be with you, Lee.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you on our show today. The first thing I like to do with the guest is for them to explain to the audience, how did you end up in economics, your journey, your story, how did you get started? It's probably a long story.
Well, I guess part of it is that parents were always talking about the news. They were always kind of socially active, at least, or slightly politically active. They weren't really politically active, but they were interested. So that was always a topic. And then there were all kinds of events going on when I was a kid. There was Cuban Missile Crisis. I was born in 1951. So by the early 1960s.
You've seen a lot of changes.
I was fully, even though I was pretty young, glued into John Kennedy and the crisis and Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement. Everything was going on at that time. Then, of course, you go, I'm a child of the 60s, and we have revolution of the 60s and peace movement. And I got involved running a peace organization in college. And I went to a Quaker high school. So I was involved in the world of public policy from an early stage, I think. And then I went to college thinking I would become a doctor. And first week in biology lab, I had to dissect a frog, not just kill the frog and examine it. It was like you kill the frog and then you resuscitate it, and then you kill it again and you bring it back. So you do this for 2 hours, recording different things because they had chemicals to inject in the heart of the frog. And by as I write in my beginning of my book, Money Magic, which is January 4th, it's coming out.
Yeah.
I was an economist at the end of that class.
So quite a dramatic change then.
Because I couldn't take working on a frog, let alone a person.
Yeah.
Seeing them suffer. So I didn't really know anything about economics when I got into it. And the first class, I had a fantastic professor, and then I was kind of hooked at that point. So I took economics courses, was a major, and then thought, well, I'll become a lawyer. I don't have the chops to be an economist. So I applied to law school. But, maybe I'll apply to some grad schools in economics just on the off chance that I get in to a good place. So I applied to 15 law schools and 15 grad schools, which was not easy or cheap at that time.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I understand.
A automated system, back then. And I got into Harvard grad school in economics. I got in some very, a lot of top grad schools, but also a lot of good law schools, but not Harvard Law School. So to me, Harvard University, Harvard, MIT, these kinds of places, that to me was like out of outer space.
Yeah.
And that I was far too stupid even to be considered. That was just a complete whim. And in my year in applying, there were 3 people from the University of Pennsylvania from my class that got into Harvard. One person got in from India. One person who's now the president of Chile got from Chile.
Really?
One person got in from Iran. So it was, and one person from Mexico, 3 from Penn.
You got in as well.
I got in. I said, I can't turn down Harvard. I got to try it. I was scared shiteless, as you guys would say, right?
Along those terms, yeah.
So I was sure I could not cut it. And I was sure that I actually had in my brain that they had made a clerical mistake, that this was just an accident that I got at Harvard University. You know, who gets into Harvard University? You have to be a genius to go to Harvard University.
Yeah, it's the elite of the elite, isn't it?
So you get there and find, there's a couple guys who were like beyond brilliant, who had not graduated high school, not graduated college, but the guy who was in charge of admissions thought found these guys somehow. They'd written an article about an article he'd written, and they criticized it. They thought it was so brilliant that he accepted them. These guys could build their own computers. They were just outside of the realm of anybody else. And plus, you're meeting all these other people, and you're sure that this is a mistake. And so we had the first theory exam, and I remember I scored number 1 in the theory exam.
Wow!
And I'm not particularly strong in mathematics.
Yeah.
I just studied my ass off. I studied day and night, did nothing else.
Worked hard.
I was lucky with the questions. So it was work, but it wasn't, sheer like IQ or anything like that. It was, or capacity for mathematics.
Yeah.
And these other guys who were so brilliant didn't bother to study, and they were at the bottom of the class, and they never graduated. They never had the discipline to graduate graduate school. So they failed out of, think about this, Lee. They failed out of high school. They failed out of college in order to fail into Harvard. They couldn't even make it out of Harvard for the PhD because they didn't have
the discipline.
So they didn't have the discipline. So I kind of learned an important lesson, which I try and get across in this Money Magic book for kids who are going to college or thinking about borrowing money and earning a career, that it's not, you can't buy prestige, you can't sell prestige, you can't make a living off of prestige. At some point, it's got to be your own effort and your own interests.
Yeah.
So, but I was a nervous wreck for about 2.5, even though I started to do okay through grad school.
Yeah.
I was still sure until about 2.5 years in that I was not qualified. I would not get, just full of anxiety. And that's when people in their 20s live a life of anxiety. And especially people that are trying an academic career.
Yeah.
Very anxious time. And if I can pass a message, which is just let the brain that wants to do this and that may have the ability to do it, let it alone. Don't worry. Just try your best. Yeah. If you fail at this, you'll succeed at something else. Because these two guys who are so brilliant, they, I'm sure, succeeded somewhere else.
Yeah.
It wasn't like they didn't have a good career, that they're living on the street.
Yeah.
No.
Their talents were directed somewhere else.
Their talents were great, but they didn't have that. There's an expression in German, it's called Sitzfleisch, which means seat flesh. So if you're an academic, if you can't sit in a seat, if you don't have enough flesh in your tush, your rear end, sit in a seat for a long time, day in and day out, like 3 in the morning at the library.
Yeah.
I'm not going to cut it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
So that's how I got started in economics.
I'm detecting quite a little bit of humbleness there, Laurence, in your story, but it's great.
No, it's true. I mean,
yeah.
Think you know it all, and then take it easy.
It's important to be open, isn't it? Because we could accidentally think that we know everything, but really we know very little. There's a lot more to learn, isn't there? And everyone's always learning.
The other thing we learn is that everybody's really good at something. I mean, this is the basic essence of Adam Smith, who's your guy, right?
The invisible hand.
Right. Here he is, a British, I think he's Scottish.
He's Scottish economist.
He's like the father, the initial creator of economics. And so there's two famous British economists. There's Adam Smith and David Ricardo, comes around 1820.
Oh, I thought you might have said someone else there. I thought you might have said John Maynard Keynes.
We can talk about Keynes.
We can go to him later on.
Yeah. But these are the two fathers of economics, because Adam Smith had the idea that if you specialize, if you do podcasts, let's say, Lee, and I write some equations about climate change, it's better for me to spend full time doing that, and you spend full time doing the podcasts or whatever it is, because that's going to be more efficient. We're going to get better climate economics out, better podcasts than if I do half of your job and half of my job, and vice versa. And then David Ricardo had this idea of comparative advantage, that trade is based not on absolute advantage. I might just possibly be a better podcaster and a better climate economist. I say that because that's kind of my current topic.
Yeah. I understand. We're doing a podcast now, aren't we? I get that. Yeah.
So let's suppose I'm better at both things than you are in absolute terms, but I'm relatively better in economics, and you're relatively better in podcasting. So what economics will lead to happen is that I will do the economics and you'll do the podcasting. So it's comparative, it's relative advantage that matters. This was a very incredibly deep insight that these guys came up with a combination of these insights, which underlies all of economic trade. I do this, and here I am on your show, right? We're engaged in a trade. I'm trading my economics for your podcast. So this is exactly where trade is coming from. So Keynes had lots of great insights. He's a British economist in the 1920s and 30s. He's the most important economist in the world, or at least the second most. There's a guy named Irving Fisher in the US at Yale who might have been even a better economist at that. Well, a more famous and important one in terms of his contributions. But these are the two guys. He explained what we call life cycle economics. Another famous British economist named Alfred Marshall thought up the notion of supply and demand. There's people supplying goods, there's others demanding goods, there's the supply curve, the demand curve, the intersect.
Is that where supply and demand came from then?
Yes, that's Marshall.
Right.
The laws of supply and demand. Marshall was explaining markets and decisions. How many apples should I buy versus oranges, given my budget, right? And Fisher transformed this into a lifetime budget. Hey, I've got not just money today I'm going to spend on apples and oranges, but I have money over my lifetime.
Yeah.
Earnings and assets. So I've got lifetime resources. And I have to decide not between apples and oranges today, but between consuming today and consuming tomorrow. Fisher figured out the economics of consumption and saving, because saving is putting away some apples for tomorrow, like acorns, like what the squirrels do, right? Consumption decision. So Fisher figured, nobody had that figured out, that you could take Marshall.
What sort of year was this? What sort of year was Fisher around?
Famous book in 1930.
Right, yeah, okay.
And, he also explained the relationship between interest rates and inflation. And he said, look, if you have very high inflation and you're paying back somebody a loan, you have to account for the fact the market is going to force you to pay a higher interest rate because of the fact that you're going to be paying back in watered down dollars or watered down pounds.
Yeah.
So there's something called the Fisher law that says that the interest rate will equal the sum of two things: the inflation rate. Inflation's higher, the interest rate will be higher, and also what's called the real interest rate, what the interest rate would be if there were no inflation. So he was a genius, but what happened with Fisher is very interesting. In 1929, about a week before the crash in 29, since he was the most famous economist really in the world, more famous than Keynes at that point,
right?
Because Keynes hadn't written his very famous book in 34, which is called The General Theory. So Fisher pronounces whatever, the New York Times or whatever, they interview him and they ask, is the stock market too high? Is it going to stay up this? He says it's not too high. It's going to stay at this level, might even go up. He said it's at a permanent plateau. Okay, a week later it crashes, and 3 years later it's down 86%. Fisher had all his money in the stock market.
Yeah.
He ends up losing everything. He'd also had invested Yale's money in the stock market. Yale University, they had said, "Hey, let's give the money to your Irving Fisher."
Yeah.
So he loses a lot of money for Yale. So Yale ends up having to actually get him off the street. He would have been begging on the street had they not. They bought up his house, which he couldn't repay. He couldn't pay the mortgage, and they rescued him. So for the public, Fisher became a bit of a joke. For economists, he's
well known.
He's like an Einstein. So
okay.
And then we go, and then if I can just finish up this like a history of economic thought, and there are lots of fantastic economists along the way that I haven't mentioned, Italian and from all over the place, and that's the really cool thing about economics is it's just so international and diverse. So we have great Chinese economists now. Anyway, the Keynes comes along and talks about how markets may not operate well. There's all kinds of problems with them. And that may be why we're sitting here in 1933 with 25% unemployment in the US and in the UK, and that we need to have the government intervene to fix the markets to get things to equilibrate, that the supply and demand equilibrium of Alfred Marshall wasn't working right. We weren't getting to full employment in the labor market. So, and then we have after World War II, Paul Samuelson comes along and another economist named Ken Arrow, and they start to mathematize economics and look at many old questions and new questions and questions in finance. There's Robert Merton who comes along and revolutionizes the economics of finance, makes it highly mathematical. The whole profession becomes much more precise. It goes from what's called political economy with a lot of kind of quasi-religious beliefs or, what's right and wrong, ethical stuff into a harder science where ethics doesn't come in. It's really what's most efficient, as opposed to if I can do something that helps you, doesn't hurt me, that's efficient. If I have to take from you to give to me, we're into religion. And anyway, modern day economics was converted by these two guys, Paul Samuelson, Ken Arrow, and I would say Bob Merton are three giants. But there are a few other giants that I left out of the story. But anyway, anybody interested in not becoming a doctor and becoming an economist now has a little bit of a background.
Yeah.
Why this is such a fascinating topic.
Economics is something that I think is something that should really be taught in school in high school. Yeah, it should be taught in high school. It shouldn't be something that you have to go and learn later on in university and through choice, because it's such an important subject that touches every single one of our lives. And will continue to do, no matter what profession, job, or anything or country you live in. So, really appreciate giving the backstory there for economics. It was fascinating.
It's great fun. You can apply economics to any single time. Health economics, labor economics, climate change, just everything you can possibly think about. Home economics, personal finance.
Yeah.
It's endless. So if you look at Kotlikoff, Kotlikoff.net is my website, Kotlikoff.net. In the US, we say that somebody on a baseball team who does a lot of things, plays a lot of positions, is called a utility infielder. They can play first base, second base, home base. They can pitch if they need to, whatever.
Yeah.
In the outfield, that's what I've worked on, all kinds of things like banking, economics of the financial system, how to fix it so we never have another great recession. That's what makes me kind of excited, figuring out ways to fix things.
Okay, so that wasn't quite where I was thinking we'd take this, but you've just said something that's really important, and I'm sure the audience would pick up on as well. Fix the banking system so we don't have another financial crisis. What's your theory on that then? What's your thoughts? What have you presented?
So I wrote a book called Jimmy Stewart is Dead.
Where can the audience find that?
It's just at Amazon. It's probably $5.
Perfect. Yeah.
Jimmy Stewart is a deceased, but he was a very famous American actor. And he's in a movie called It's a Wonderful Life, which is about banking.
Yeah.
And it's a Christmas movie that most Americans see. And Jimmy Stewart's this honest banker who stops a bank run because he's honest and people believe him, and he gives a great speech.
Right.
But in 2008, we had all these bankers that nobody thought of as Jimmy Stewart.
Mm.
So there was no Jimmy Stewart around to stop this big bank run that we had in 2008. It's primarily banks running on banks, by the way, not so much people running on banks,
Yeah.
but banks not trusting other bankers. And that's what brought down the system. And we had 27 major banks around the world collapse, including we had problems in the UK.
All across Europe, all across the world. Yeah.
So anyway, the book describes the financial crisis but also how to fix things. And then there's another book called On the Economic Consequences of the Vickers Commission. Now, Sir John Vickers is a British economist at Oxford, and he was given the job by the British government after the Great Recession to investigate what happened. So they put together a commission. And this book is kind of a critique of their study. It says that they got it all wrong. It's a very harsh critique. Vickers is somebody I know, nice, great guy, great economist, but I think the commission did a terrible job.
Yeah.
To tell you the truth, I think it was a whitewash to reinstate the city back where they could redo the same thing. So the two books together are worth reading together. And then there's another book, another paper called The Big Con on Kotlikoff.net. If you read the three things together, you get my current thinking. And they're all very readable to the public. There's no mathematics. But the key idea here is that we have this financial system. They're like a highway system, financial highway. They're connecting the lenders with the borrowers and the savers and the investors. And they're running the connections, just like a gas station is connecting a driver and a refinery so that the driver can then use the highway. The highway is a public good. The financial system is a public good. You don't gamble with it. So you don't want the entities running the public good to be at risk of going under, to have borrowed money and promise to repay it no matter what, and then go under, and then nobody can use the system. It's just like a gas station. All the gas stations engaging in very risky practices that lead them all to fail the same day. Imagine you had not a single gas station open in the UK. That public good could not operate, right?
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
The British Parliament the next day would say gas stations can only do one thing:
Sell gas.
Buy gas and sell gas.
Yeah,
they can't gamble.
Yeah,
with the public good. We have the banks gambling with the public good. So what I'm saying is let's have the banks operate, but when they take money in and then invest it or lend it, they can't borrow the money. They can't be leveraged. They have to take in the money and hand back shares. They have to operate as what's called in our country equity finance mutual fund systems. But there is a solution here. It's dead simple. I was asked to talk to the Vickers Commission. I flew all the way over, spent a day talking to them, or like 4 hours.
Yeah.
And then when they wrote up the report, they completely distorted what it was doing. And by the way, it got a lot of attention. I had, the Mervyn King was the head of he got quite interested. He made several speeches about limited purpose banking. Andy Haldane, who was at the bank, was the second in command. So I was asked to speak to something like 70 top economists in the British government, from the bank, from the Treasury, about limited purpose banking in roughly 2009, before the book came out, maybe even 2008. So there was a lot of interest by the British government in this proposal. They put together this commission, and the politicians in the UK are surely being paid off by the city. And the commission was full of bankers who had no interest in doing anything correct. And the same thing happened in the US. We had the Dodd-Frank Commission.
Yeah.
There was no discussion whatsoever of this alternative, which was, widely being discussed in the US and the UK. Well, not maybe widely, but certainly I was writing a lot about it. If you look at Jimmy Stewart is Dead, Mervyn King endorses the second edition of the book.
Right.
On the cover of the second edition.
Yeah.
Okay? And nobody takes this proposal seriously. And just to be clear, I want to make this is in large part Islamic banking. It goes way back. In lots of the ancient religious texts, whether we're talking about the New Testament, the Old Testament, the Quran, there's prohibitions against lending. Okay, and the Muslims, and I'm not a religious expert on it.
Yeah,
at least in theory, but not as far as in practice. They don't do this, but in theory, they're saying you cannot charge interest, you cannot borrow money, you can have like a joint partnership. That's what an equity investment is. If I put money into your fund and you hand me back shares of stock and you take the money and you invest it in some, let's say, factory or some retail store, and it does well, then you pay me back and my shares go up in value, and you take the money you get back from that investment, and then you buy back my shares or you pay a dividend, and I do well. Or if it does poorly, I do poorly. But you, as an entity running this mutual fund, you never go under. You don't go bankrupt. You're the connection between me and the retail store. My money is going through you to the retailer, to Sainsbury's or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's what the Muslims, in theory, say we should be doing.
Yeah.
Going back, it's fascinating that they came up with this idea, hundreds of years ago, centuries ago.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize the connection between what I was proposing. And there were people at the bank, Andy Haldane was second in charge, and you had their third in charge. And then you had Mervyn King. We were all kind of reinventing Islamic banking at that point.
Wow.
And having, major discussions at the bank, and everybody was anybody at the Bank of England, His Majesty's Treasury, and then economists from abroad came to talk about this with me. Not quite sure of the date, but but we're back where we were. So we're back in a situation where the financial system is highly vulnerable, where it could collapse again, despite these stress tests. So nobody should be under any delusion that this problem has been fixed. It's just been recreated.
Yeah. As we spoke a lot about the global perspective and global kind of issues. If we bring it back down to the individual, when we spoke, as an example, it was you came up with the idea of an economics approach to financial planning, which I absolutely loved instantly. As soon as you said it, for a title for the show, an economics approach for financial planning. Could you just explain a little bit why you came out with that as a title for the show? Because I thought it was excellent.
Well, everybody has to deal with their own personal economic issues and financial issues. And so one of the things I've been working on for years now is personal finance. And I developed a software company that has personal financial software, Maxifi.com. Maxifi.
I'll put the links in the show notes.
Yeah. So if you're British, what you want to do is, under settings and assumptions, if you're running the program, tell the program that U.S. taxes are going to be eliminated immediately, and the U.S. Social Security benefits will be eliminated immediately, and then enter as special expenses your estimate of your taxes, and as special receipts.
So UK residents can use it as well?
Yeah, anybody could use it. The taxes and the pension benefits that are being given by the state won't be as accurately calculated. You'll have to calculate them yourself and kind of maybe iterate around a little bit, try different until you get a better handle. But anyway, the idea is, look,
from an American perspective, just go from there.
So the universal economics answer here that's U.S. centric is that we have U.S. taxes and our Social Security pension system, but otherwise it's a universal system.
Yeah.
This goes back to Irving Fisher. He came up with the idea of life cycle consumption smoothing. The idea, it's the same thing as a squirrel. I'm trying to smooth my living standard between the summer and the winter. I'm trying to have an equal number of acorns to consume when it's hot and when it's cold.
Yeah.
Okay. So Fisher said, consumption smoothing, the decision to take my lifetime budget and allocate it between consuming when young and old the goal is to have the same consumption when young and the same consumption when old, roughly speaking.
Yeah.
Because of something called diminishing marginal utility of consumption, which in simpler terms is satiation. If I gave you, Lee, do you like to eat steak?
Yeah.
Okay. So suppose I gave you a truckload of frozen steak.
Yeah.
Were delivered, all the steaks you're ever going to eat over the rest of your life. Would you eat them all today?
No, absolutely not.
You would save some for the future. You'd automatically.
Hopefully, if I had a big enough freezer.
Right. Well, the truck's going to stay out front. Right? There for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You're going to smooth your steak. You'll have a steak a day, but not 50 in one day.
Yeah.
Right. That's consumption smoothing. So economics says, ask people what their resources are, how much their assets are now, what their earnings are, how long they're going to work. Tell us about their pensions, figure out their pensions, understand their taxes, and then take all that information and use a sophisticated mathematical algorithm in the computer to figure out how much they should spend today, how many steaks to eat today, such that they can keep eating steaks at the same pace, right through their maximum age of life.
Yeah.
So that's called sustainable consumption. That's consumption smoothing.
Okay.
So our software and economics in general says the economics approach is take somebody's resources, do consumption smoothing, figuring out what they can spend such that they can keep on saving. Keep on spending. And in the process, you figure out how much they need to save. Because if I bring you a truckload of steaks and you only eat 2 of them today, all the rest you've saved. So I'm figuring out not just your spending, but your saving. So there's that decision. There's the life insurance to protect the survivors in case you die and there aren't any steaks anymore coming in. So you're trying to smooth your living standard across time, but across times, across good times and bad times.
Yeah.
So this is all discussed in this book, Money Magic, because not everybody wants to run software. Even though the software is dead simple, it's fantastic. It works like TurboTax.
People like to have the feel of it in front of them.
If they want to, but then there's people that just want to understand what to do.
Yeah.
And so I tried to write the book for both parties. And the consumption smoothing is about, first of all, getting a smooth living standard path, equal number of acorns over the year, right?
Yeah.
But also raising the number of acorns that I get to consume every day.
Yeah.
How do you safely raise your living standard? There's lots and lots of ways to safely raise your living standard. And then the question beyond that, I mean, look, career choice, job choice,
all those
things matter. Retirement decisions, how much you spend on housing, how much you use these retirement account vehicles to lower your taxes over your lifetime. In our country, we have a lot of leeway on taking your pension and how that can raise your lifetime spending, your acorns per day. And then beyond that, there's the issue of, if I take some of my money and invest it, how much will my living standard move around, vary?
Yeah.
And so this entire approach is, have you ever heard the word orthogonal? In mathematics, it means—
I've not heard that, no.
It means that it's at right angles. So conventional financial planning, that anybody who goes to a conventional planner in the UK or the US or Europe, they're going to get advice that's orthogonal to what economics says. It's at right angles. It's completely the opposite advice. The methodology is day and night, different. So in the US, we have something called the Registered Investment Advisor Program. We have about 20 or 30 certificate programs for giving advice to people. There's nothing in those programs, there's nothing in the curriculum that any economist would teach for 5 minutes in economics course. We think it's all garbage. And they think that what we're doing is all garbage.
Oh, right. Okay.
They don't teach even 10 minutes of what Irving Fisher developed 100 years ago. They don't spend 10 minutes on the economics approach to financial planning because their software doesn't do it. They don't have the software to do the calculations, and their software is geared to sell product. So this is what the city, that's what you guys call your financial.
It's called the City of London. Yeah.
And I've spent some time at the city. I was a fellow, a Hubelin Norman fellow at the Bank of England.
Yeah.
So I worked for part of a year at the Bank of England, had fantastic time, lived in St. John's Wood with my family. Obviously that's an expensive neighborhood, but it wasn't, we could afford it for a few months. But it was tremendous working at the Bank of England. But economics and the city, you go outside the Bank of England where there are economists, and you go down to the different banks, what they're telling people to do is 100% different from what economists would say to do.
Yeah.
And I could get into explaining that, but I don't know how much time you have.
well, I mean, it's up to you, Laurence. We've got as much time as you want to give. I mean, it's
okay. Well, maybe you want to break this into segments, whatever, either way. But I'll just explain the methodology that we have. Well, I mean, and versus what they have. So our methodology is we look at the resources and we say, okay, let's use computer algorithm. Partly I got a patent for the methodology to figure out to the dollar how much to spend so that you can have a smooth living standard per household member, taking into account economies and shared living, which is very important. Maybe you've got a disabled child who's still in the household. You need to take that into account. You need to take into account the fact that people may not want to have a perfectly smooth living standard. They may want their living standard to decline starting maybe around 80. You're not going to go to the movies as much, not go on vacation as much. So ask them what their desired pattern is and have the spending fit their desired pattern. But also respect their cash constraints, respect the fact that they can't necessarily have a perfectly smooth living standard without going into debt. So have your algorithm handle all this stuff. So I developed that through my company, and it does it in half a second. It does it on Amazon web servers. It's very secure. That's our software. And there's only one program in the world that does it, which is our software, this Maxifi.com program. It's $149. It can raise people's lifetime living standards.
Is that $149 a year or for the month?
It's $149, and I think the renewal is like $119. First year is $149, and then it goes down to $100.
They're so cheap.
Some people are doubling their living. I can take a typical middle-class household. If I get them to work a little bit longer, get them to do the right thing on their housing, get them to do the right thing on Social Security, deal properly with their retirement accounts to lower their taxes, move to a state where there's no state income taxes or lower taxes, I can typically raise their living standard by 50%.
You're making a difference. It's brilliant. I love it.
With no risk whatsoever, no money in the stock market, nothing.
Yeah.
And
that's even without adding the idea of investing to that.
The book is called Money Magic because this looks to a person, to me, like magic.
Yeah.
Financial magic, because there's no risk.
Yeah.
Okay. If I tell you to take your Social Security at 70, not at 62, and because I know the rules are that you'll get 76% more per year adjusted for inflation compared to taking it at 62. And yes, you'll give up 8 years, but the real risk is you'll live to 100. So you have to plan to live to 100 because you might.
Yeah.
And therefore I have to plan for your whole lifespan, your maximum lifespan. I can't count on you dying on time. So now I've gotten your living standard up dramatically just by that decision.
Yeah.
Okay. So now the conventional planners are doing something different. So you walk into, I'm the conventional planner, let's say. You walk into my shop and I asked you, Lee, tell me how much do you want to spend in retirement? What's your target? What's your goal? What's your replacement rate? How much do you want to replace your pre-retirement income by spending in retirement? And, if you ask me that question, I'd say I'd like to spend $1 billion a day. I've got no budget.
Yeah.
You say, how much would I like to spend? What's my target? $1 billion a day. It's a first order stupid question. So there's no anchoring of this question to what's affordable.
Well, we all want to maintain the same sort of lifestyle, don't we, as a minimum?
And maintaining the lifestyle goes back to your lifetime budget. What can you afford to maintain?
Yeah.
But if I just answer you this question and you say, well, you start to scratch your head because you're puzzled by the question.
Yeah.
And then I say, well, let's use the convention, the industry standard, which is that you spend 80% of what you earned at the end of your work life. Now, it turns out that replacement rate, you say, okay, well, fine, use that. Now I've set a target that is miles too high for most households because at the end of your life, it's your peak earnings, right?
Yeah, the highest earnings you're going to earn throughout your career, essentially, isn't it?
Right, and you're paying your peak taxes and you're not spending at that level. So the spending is not the same as the earnings. Okay? So now I've set you a target for your spending in retirement that's far too high. The next thing I say is, well, look, Lee, if I take your current assets and I look at how you're investing and I run a simulation of what's the probability that if you invest your money and your additional, what you're now saving, which is, by the way, far too small for sure, what's the probability that once you hit retirement and you spend at your target, you just give me your target, right? Well, I really conned you into that target, right? You give me that target. It's your target. Here's your plan. Gee, the probability of you're making your target is very low. So Lee, let me have you invest in high yield securities. Yes, I'm going to charge you 100 basis points, 1% a year or 1.5%, or even some people charge 3%. And gee, the probability of you're making your target, because this investment strategy has much higher returns on average. But what they don't tell you is that the probability of you're losing your shirt is much higher.
It's higher, yeah, of course.
It's not that fraction of times that you'll miss your target will go down. But when they do go down, they'll go down by a much bigger degree.
Yeah.
Okay. So the issue there is that the downside risk is much, much larger and it's not being shown to you. So now they've engaged in a bait and switch. They baited you into the wrong target, and then they've switched you into investing in a product that's very expensive, that puts you at high risk.
Yeah.
That's the oldest con game in the books.
Yeah.
In the world.
Yeah.
This is what bait and switch is referring to.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is conventional financial planning. It's used universally because it works for Wall Street. It works for the city. It does not work for us.
Yeah. It's a shame, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a shame.
That's the difference. That's why I wanted to talk about the economics approach, because it's an honest approach. It's not I don't sell any product. We would not sell, a company doesn't take any advertising, and we don't sell a single financial product because that's a conflict of interest. There's no
it's a non-biased sort of opinion.
You can't give advice and sell product at the same time. There should be a law that says if you're Barclays, you cannot give financial advice.
Yeah.
You're there to
offer products or advice.
You can't sell advice. You can give advice, but you can't sell product. Yeah, you can give advice, but you cannot sell products. Or you can sell products, but you can't give advice. But you can't do both.
Yeah. I can see that. I can see the logic, and that makes sense. Laurence, absolutely phenomenal. The topics and the range that we've covered has been amazing. It's been absolutely. I've really enjoyed it myself. I hope the audience has. Just as we come to the close of the podcast here, what would be the big takeaway you'd like the audience to take away here? I mean, what would you like them to kind of finish off with?
Well, I would say that we have a world right now which is divided. We're arguing. We've got the right and the left. We've got the Tories. We've got the people, the Brexit people want Brexit. People. We're not. A lot of these discussion or a lot of these fights are diversions to shield what we're actually currently doing, which is in large part expropriating our kids without talking about that, without making it clear that in the US right now, we're having a big fight over how progressive our reforms should be. We're not talking about the burden on the next generation. There's only one person, Senator Manchin from West Virginia, who keeps talking about if we expand these programs, who's going to pay for it? Are we going to pay for it, or is our kids? We already have all these unfunded programs, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. We already have a fiscal system that's entirely broke. So this is a diversion to avoid something of common interest, which is our kids. So I would say that economics can cut through this, and that anybody who's got an interest in economics, but everybody should have an interest, and we should look at the big questions and think about what economics brings to the table. So I would say, look at kotlikoff.net. There's columns that are written for the public. There's articles. These things can change the conversation to something that we can get to our common interest. There are people who make money out of getting us to fight with each other. The press does that. The politicians do that. This is their careers.
Yeah.
But if you've spent your entire life working with, Argentines and Chileans, my first published paper was with the president of Chile, one of my best friends. We're in grad school together. People from Russia. I'm working now with people. You understand that we are all the same.
Yeah. I've worked all over the world. I've worked with Canadians, Americans, Australians. I've been to Holland, Norway, Argentina myself. Yeah, I know where you're coming from.
We're in the same boat. We have, if we would just get around the color of our skin and these ridiculously surface issues, and they're purely surface, and start looking at people and start enjoying people and start hanging out with people who are different, we would have so much more fun. That's the great joy of being an economist, an academic economist, is interacting with people from different countries. That's like the most amazing thing there is.
Yeah.
And then to work with them and to get their ideas and your ideas and then do something together. This is like building a sandcastle together. You've got like a kid from the Dominican Republic and a kid from Maine sitting there on the beach building a sandcastle together. It doesn't get better than that.
Yeah.
It's that good.
Yeah. Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah. And already, like you've said, people can find you on Maxifi.com, Kotlikoff.net. You've got your book out, Money Magic, which is out January the 6th, I think.
The 4th. It's
the 4th of January.
Pre-order it now if you'd like.
Pre-order it now. There you go. So I'll make sure all the notes are in the show notes below. So please, I encourage you to
buy it from a bookstore so we can keep the bookstores open. Not Amazon.
Yeah.
There's a link to Amazon, but you can buy it from a bookstore.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your time, Laurence. Amazing.
Anytime. We'll do some more. Okay?
Definitely. If you're up for it, I'm up for it.
Cool. Yeah.
Brilliant. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Fund Your Retirement Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, share, or to leave us a review. Also, please check our website for more content, solutions, and useful resources at www.fundyourretirement.com, as well as on LinkedIn for regular content and updates. We look forward to seeing you next time.